Hello. So we are meeting today to talk about exercise 6 from chapter 17. I'm doing this separate video separate from the ones that are already available in the chapter 17 reference materials folder at the request of a student who indicated that the video didn't cover this as well as maybe it should have. So I want to show you a couple things first. In Brightspace, you can see the reference materials area, and each area, each chapter has its own separate folder. So we're in chapter 17 now. You can see that we have the videos there to cover the chapter. There's also an Excel spreadsheet here. I'm going to be using that today. There's a completed cost report for this exercise from last semester, so the numbers may be different. And then there's an exhibit that is a snip from the book that shows what the the general layout of that cost report would look like when it's completed. So we go now to Cengage to see now this is exercise 6, as I indicated. And I'm going to be using the cost of production report in Excel. So since I have this information printed out in front of me, I'm not going to be jumping back and forth, but you can see in the exercise in See Now where the numbers are coming from. Mainly, I'm going to be using the information that's here in this T account already, as well as the cost per equivalent unit that's already been calculated. So let's go over to the cost of production report. Actually, before that, let's just take a look at this T account so we can understand what information is included here. We have the beginning balance of $1,075,500. That is for the 30,000 units that were started in the previous period, and those units are 40% completed. Because we use the assumption that all direct materials are placed in process at the beginning of production, we know that in this $1,075,500, we have all the direct materials for those 30,000 units, plus 40% of the conversion costs. Those conversion costs, remember, include both the direct labor and the factory overhead that has been applied. So if those units are 40% completed at the beginning of the month, that means we have 60% of the work left to do in the current period. So the first thing we do is finish up those beginning inventory units, adding the other 60% of the direct labor and overhead needed to complete those units. Then we start additional units. We can tell from this line that we started 400,000 additional units. We added the direct materials for all of those units. And then we did some work on those units. We transferred 406,000 units to finished goods. So that would include the 30,000 units that were in beginning inventory and an additional 376,000 units to make up the 406,000 total that we started this month. So if we finished 406,000, again, 30,000 of those were from the beginning inventory, 376,000 from the units that were started this month. And we started 400,000 units this month. That means the ending inventory would have the other 24,000 units that we had not finished. So all of that is going to be important information for us when we go to the cost of production report and start to fill that in order to be able to answer the questions that are given here. Could we answer these questions without using the Excel template? Absolutely. The textbook did not provide that template for us. I've created that myself and provided it to you to use because I think it makes it easy to organize the information more easily in your head to be able to see it on the screen like that. And so the use of this Excel template is optional, but I find it very beneficial. And I also like the idea of having that set format. The format follows that exhibit I showed you in Brightspace here. This is the snip from the book. And so the template that I provided uses this same format. You get comfortable with that format. And that Excel template's available for you to use for the exercises, the problem, if that's helpful, and of course on the exam as well. So let's go to that Excel template. I've already talked us through the information that's provided to us, and I'm just going to start filling in that information in the template. Now, the white spaces in this template are the only ones where you should be entering information. I don't have this template locked in any way. You are welcome to put notes or whatever in the rest of the template. But as far as using the template, it's the white spaces that need to be completed. So we can see from that T account that I showed you in the exercise that we have 30,000 units that were in beginning inventory, and we started an additional 400,000 units during the period. And so that means that we're looking for 430,000 units to figure out where are they at the end of the period. And so after we finish this next step, we should know what happened to those 430,000 units. Where are they? So as I said, the first thing we do is finish up those units that were in beginning inventory. So that's 30,000 of those units. Those units, those 30,000 units, as we know, already had their direct materials all added at the beginning of the process. If those were in beginning inventory, that means they were started last month, the last period. And so all the direct materials were already added last period. And that means this period, this month, we didn't add any. And so I'm just putting a 0 in there. We added no new direct materials to the product in this period. I should also point out that these first steps that we're doing here, this whole section, everything in this section is units only. So no dollars here. This is just units. So those 30,000 units that were in beginning inventory, we were told that they were 40% complete at the beginning of the month. 40% of the work had already been done at the beginning of the month. So how much was left to be completed? 60%. They were already 40% done. We had to do 60% more of the conversion work. That includes, again, direct labor and overhead. So 60% of 30,000 units is equivalent to 18,000 whole units worth of conversion work that we did this period. Now we know, we can see on the credit side of that T account in the exercise that 406,000 units were transferred out to finished goods. Of those 406,000 units, 30,000 were already in beginning inventory. And so that means, as I already said, 376,000 of those units were started and completed this period. Again, the first 30,000 were already started from last month, and those were finished, transferred into finished goods, and then we started another 400,000. 376,000 of those units were finished, and the rest were left in ending inventory. So if these 376,000 units were started and completed this period, that means that we incurred all of those costs. We added all the direct materials, and we did all of the conversion work. All of the direct labor and overhead were incurred this period. So I'm just going to put my totals in here like that. Okay. Now we go to the next line, ending inventory. So we know that there were 430,000 units that we were working on at some point during this period, during this month. 406,000 of those units were finished, which means 24,000 were still in process at the end of the month. Again, our assumption is, you were told in the exercise that all the direct materials are added at the beginning of the process. So that means we added 24,000 units worth of direct materials for those units. So during this period, during this month, we added a total of 400,000 units worth of direct materials. Those are the units that we started this month. The units that were in beginning inventory, their direct materials were added last month. Now, these 24,000 units are in ending inventory because we're not done with them yet. And looking at that T account, it tells us they were 30% complete. We've done 30% of the conversion work, incurred 30% of the conversion cost, direct labor and overhead. 30% of 24,000 is 7,200 units. And so now we have our totals. We added $400,000 of direct, not dollars, excuse me, 400,000 units of direct materials, and we incurred 401,200 units worth of conversion costs. Those totals are going to transfer directly down here into the next step in our process. You'll notice it says total equivalent units this period. That's the totals from this calculation that we just finished. Total costs incurred this period. Well, for direct materials, it's right in the T account. The total costs that were incurred this period was $4,500,000. And for conversion costs, we're adding together the direct labor, $4,120,000, and the factory overhead, $20,060,000. And so to finish up this next step, we can calculate the cost per equivalent unit by simply dividing the total costs incurred this period divided by the total number of units. So that's $11.25 for direct materials and $60 for conversion costs. Now, those numbers were actually given to us in the exercise. Again, I told you before we started, I'm using this Excel template that I provided to you because I think it gives us a good way of framing the information that we need so that you get used to seeing the same approach each time. So even though these two numbers were provided to us in the exercise, I guess that's just a good way for us to check and confirm, yes, we're doing this right. Now for the cost summary. Beginning work in process. Looking at that T account, the beginning work in process had $1,075,500. The total costs added this period were for the direct materials. Actually, I don't have to do a separate calculation here. The direct materials from right here and the conversion costs from here, a total of $28,572,000 were added. And so the cost to be accounted for, $29,647,500. And again, we have a way of checking ourselves because that number, total cost to be accounted for, needs to, when we finish the very bottom line of this process cost report, total costs accounted for need to add up to that $29,647,500. So the whole point is we know how much cost went in there. We now need to, in this final step, say, okay, where are they now? What happened to them? So beginning work in process, again, given to us in the T account, $1,075,500. The cost to complete. Now I want you to notice that this column C is for direct materials, and this column E is for conversion costs. So cost to complete beginning inventory. We didn't add any direct materials. How do I know that? The exercise tells us all direct materials are added at the beginning of the process. And this process for these 30,000 units was started in the previous period. That's why they're in beginning inventory. How else do I know that? Because right here in this first step, we said we added 0 units of direct materials. But we did have some work to do for those units. How much work? Well, we figured right here, 18,000 units. So I'm going to be using that number, 18,000 equivalent whole units worth of conversion work. And how much did that cost us? Well, right here, $60,000 per unit. A total of $1,080,000 was added to that beginning inventory to finish. There we go, to finish that up. So really, I shouldn't have those cents on there. So the total cost for the beginning inventory, what was already in there, what did we add to it? Now, cost for units started and completed. How many units did we start and complete? 376,000. We added 376,000 units of direct materials at $11.25 each, and we added 376,000 units of conversion costs at $60 each. So again, you'll notice that what I'm doing is pulling in the units from the first step, the first part of the template, and then the cost per unit from the second part. And now I'm just adding across, adding the direct materials and the conversion costs. The units that were started and completed had a total cost of $26,790,000. The next line says total cost transferred out. So that's the $2,155,500 that were for the units in beginning inventory, plus the $26,790,000 for the units we started and completed. Last step. We still had some units in ending inventory. How many units was that? It was 24,000 units right here. We added 24,000 units of direct materials at $11.25 each. And we did not do all of the conversion work. That's why they're still in ending inventory. We're not done with them. So how much did we add? 7,200 units we calculated in this first step at $60 each, a total of $432,000. And so our ending inventory has a total cost of $702,000. And now I'm just going to check myself, make sure that those two numbers do add to that number we had here from the intermediate step. And yes, it does match. And so I feel pretty confident that we have completed this calculation, this template correctly. And now, using the information we have here, we can go back to our exercise in Cengage, there it is, and answer these questions. The cost of beginning number one, the cost of beginning work in process inventory completed this period. So on the template, cost of what we completed right here, $2,155,500. $2,155,500. Cost of units transferred to finished goods. Cost for units, total cost transferred out. Here it is. Total cost transferred out, $28,945,500. Cost of ending work in process inventory. Here it is. On line 38, $702,000. Now, cost per unit of the completed beginning work in process inventory. I have not calculated this yet, but I will do that right now. And I'm going to put the calculation on the screen so that you can see it. So the total cost of our beginning inventory, number two that we've already included, or sorry, number one that we've already included here, $2,155,500. That's the answer to number one. And that was for 30,000 units. So what is 2 million? Let's see here. 2,155,500 divided by 30,000. That is a cost of $71.85 per unit. Now we already know from the production template how much it costs for the current units. $60 for conversion costs, $11.25 for the direct materials. That's a total of $71.25 that we spent in the current month. So it was $71.85 for the ones that were started last month. The ones that were started and completed this month, so the ones that we did all the work this month, only $71.25. So 4B, did the production cost change from the preceding period? The answer is yes, because the cost per unit went from 71.85 down to 71.25. Now letter C says, assuming that the direct materials cost per unit did not change from the previous period, did the conversion cost per equivalent unit increase, decrease, or remain the same? So if the direct materials is the same and the total went down, it must be that the conversion costs went down or decreased. And so I'm just sticking our green check marks in there. Again, this exercise looks like it's fairly simple. And yes, we could have maybe spent a little bit less time finding the answers to these specific questions that were asked. However, I do think it's important to keep it in that common format of the cost of production report. And again, that's why I've provided this template for you. You should feel free to use this. You do not need to turn it in, whether you use it for the exercises, the problem, the exam, you do not need to turn it in. But if you're asking me for assistance on any one of those things and you are using the template, certainly feel free to save it and email it to me and say, hey, what am I doing wrong here? Well, thank you for joining us today. I hope that this tutorial on exercise 6 for the 16th edition is helpful. And as always, if you have any questions, please email me at hinescl01@sunyjcc.edu. Thank you.